All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 Baseball community. I am definitely excited to be here this week for this week's episode. The baseball season coming around the corner. A little later for some of you, but we are now moving to baseball season every year on X without fail. As soon as the Super Bowl is over, and talk about a great Super Bowl. As a fan of coaches, as much as anything, seeing Andy Reid win a Super Bowl, I'm not a Chiefs fan, I'm not a Niners fan, but as a fan of coaches, especially old man coaches like him, I know he's not old, but he's old compared to all these young NFL coaches. And he just has that grandpa feel about him. It's really cool to see him excited and winning. Again, I didn't have a dog in the fight, but just from a coach's perspective, how do you not like Andy Reid? And the things his players say about him are pretty impressive and really awesome about what kind of person he is. Now, I'm not going to dive into the Super Bowl or any of that. Football season is now over. Baseball season is coming up. And what I was alluding to is without fail, as soon as the Super Bowl finishes, the posts saying it's now baseball season come out in full force, at least from those people that I follow, which is predominantly baseball coaches, baseball players, etc. So while baseball season might be a little ways away for some of you, maybe still 3 or 4 months away for some of you that have colder winters, longer winters, it's officially baseball season in my book. With that said, I'm excited to announce that the drill design guide has been updated, and I think it's a lot better now. It should be ready by next week. I'll announce it on this podcast next week. If it's ready to go, I'll announce that. And I've spent about 10 hours revising it, updating it, trying to make the message easier to digest, more clear, and I'll update you on that. And as soon as that's ready to go, it'll go up on the website. You can get it right away for free. Now, in today's episode, I'm excited to bring you an interview I did with Coach Kevin Woodard. Now, Coach Woodard, Kevin, is somebody who understands the youth baseball arena, or I should say the youth baseball community, all the dynamics of the youth baseball world very well. That's what he's been immersed in. That's what he does. Not only has he been a youth baseball parent, but more specifically, a coach, and even been heavily involved in the Little League and on the board and the intricacies and the inner workings of youth baseball and all the different areas of youth baseball. It's his passion to be a great baseball coach. He has a lot of good information to share. Him and I started corresponding via email a while back, and it became very apparent to me that Kevin was somebody that I thought would be an excellent choice to bring on, or an excellent person to bring on the podcast. And so it's going to be a 2-part interview. Each part will be approximately 30 to 40 minutes. In the interview, Kevin starts off by sharing an interesting story about what motivated him to become a coach. I think a lot of coaches might resonate with this. I know I resonate with it. He talks about the difference between coaching our own kid versus the whole team. He shares tips on utilizing and dividing up coaching attention evenly during practice. He has a very bold and I think excellent tip about using the dugout during practice. Some great advice on using players that are older and leveraging their knowledge and their willingness to help younger players. He talks about his thoughts on punishment and how to hold players accountable without punishment. And we go into other topics as well, information that will be insightful, helpful, and it's specific to youth baseball coaches. And while bringing on famous professional players or high-level college coaches, if I were to have those coaches on the podcast, could they talk about more advanced stuff? Yes. Could they talk about the drag bunt for 45 minutes? Yes. The challenge is when you get such advanced coaches, and this is why I try to avoid the advanced coaches. It's not because they're intelligent. Of course not. Advanced coaches know the game extremely well. Why I try to avoid bringing advanced coaches on here, and I've had some advanced coaches. There was a college pitching coach that came on years ago, and I noticed even then I had to really work hard to get the conversation focused on youth baseball because it's different. It just is. And so there's that balance of can we learn excellent strategies? Can we learn from people who really understand the game, but understand youth baseball really well? And while advanced coaches, college coaches, pro players, pro coaches understand the game of baseball at an elite level, they very rarely understand youth baseball at an elite level. And of course, that makes sense. With that said, I do have another interview scheduled with a grade school buddy of mine, played high school ball with him. He went on to play professional baseball. He played college baseball. So he played the high level baseball, but he spent a lot of years now, the last almost 10 years in the youth baseball arena, out on the youth baseball field. So that's going to be a good interview too. It's somebody who played at a high level, but somebody who's been immersed in the youth baseball world, but has that high level viewpoint. And I'm excited to bring that to you. Not because he's a grade school buddy of mine. I can talk to him on the phone, and I talk to him on the phone. We can talk on the phone randomly on a Wednesday. It doesn't have to be on the recording. It's not going to be about him and I catching up. It's going to be about giving all of you as much quality advice, tips, insight as we can in an efficient way. With that said, before we dive into part one of Coach Kevin's interview, I mentioned last week I had a strategy about leveraging those people around us. So I'll say this, and I'll be brief because I want to dive into the interview, but this is super, super important. I truly believe that we need to ask questions of our assistant coaches or the coaching staff around us, the parents on the team. I highly recommend coaches do an inventory on their knowledge and strengths. And sometimes those strengths have nothing to do with baseball skills and teaching baseball. But there's other things that parents, assistant coaches, older siblings are good at. Older siblings are great if they do know baseball or they do play baseball, because then they can come out to the field and you can leverage them to be an extra coach. And for some players, they may be a lot more willing to listen to somebody that's an older kid versus maybe an adult. And so leveraging older siblings, having them come out and help with practice, even if it's throwing batting practice, so you can focus on working with your hitters and their hitting approach, or tee work over here, or the drag bunt station, or the batting cage, or with your pitchers that might be throwing some bullpens during batting practice. You can leverage and scale your practice and your quality reps by leveraging siblings. Ask your assistant coaches, what do they feel the most confident coaching? What area of the game do they feel most confident coaching? What area of the game do they have the best drills for? And then leverage that. I think that's important, rather than just divvying it up and saying, all right, I'm going to take this group, you take that group. You say, all right, this group's focus is what? That group's focus is what? That group over there, that focus is going to be what? And then connect as best you can with the assistant coach's strengths. Also, there might be some parents that can come out and help simply by shagging baseballs or organizing equipment, having equipment ready for the next drill. Maybe the parent's strength is setting up an outing for the team. Get yourself a dad, a mom, and say, hey, I know you can't make it out to practice, but could you call around and see if you can set up an outing for us? Can you plan our outings? I wouldn't rely on the assistant coaches or the manager to set up outings. I would leverage the other parents who could do it on the weekend, who could do it in the evening, who could schedule that stuff on their lunch break. They could do it over the phone. They could use their computer to do it. So I would leverage other parents who are not coaching. Since you're coaching and putting your time into the team, and the assistant coaches are out there putting their time in at practice, why not leverage those parents that, can't be out there? Their job doesn't allow them to be out there. Or maybe they're very hesitant to coach because they don't know anything about baseball. Leverage them to schedule some really cool team bonding outings and have them plan the whole thing. I've mentioned before, I would have at least 3 outside of practice and outside of game outings or get-togethers, at least 3 per season, if not 4. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew and overdo it, but definitely at least 3 preseason, midseason, postseason. But if you can do a 4th one, that'd be great. Maybe you say, hey, you're in charge of preseason get-together. You're in charge of the midseason get-together. You're in charge of the postseason. And if there's another parent that's willing to set something up, get them on board and have a 4th get-together. Let them be creative. So you have parents that you can leverage that aren't there coaching. You have your assistants that you can leverage their strengths to more efficiently and more accurately coach up the strengths, the skills of the team and the players, and then getting siblings involved. That's a really good idea. Getting an older sibling, an older brother that can come throw a batting practice and save some arms, can hit ground balls, can work with the catchers. Maybe you have an older sibling that's a catcher. Maybe they play high school ball and they're a catcher. Bring them out. Their knowledge is definitely going to suffice out there at an 8-year-old practice, a 9-year-old practice, even a 10-year-old practice. I would say this, I would have some guidance. I would set some parameters, but then let them be creative. I'd say, hey, you have this much time. This is really the main couple things we'd like to get better at, and then let them do their thing to get to that goal. Tell them what you want, not how to do it, and go from there. Another thing, the 4th part you could leverage, though the 4th thing you could leverage is the league. Talk to your league about getting somebody in your area that might be the local varsity coach. You got to be careful who you're bringing in because Their message may not pertain or be specific for youth baseball, but talk to the league about having a coaching clinic. That would be icing on the cake, but definitely leveraging your assistant coaches and their strengths so they can more specifically help the needs of the team more effectively and more efficiently and more confidently. Leveraging parents to plan and schedule those things that are off the field, get-togethers, awards, etc. And then leveraging siblings. Leverage those siblings of your players, and most definitely if they play baseball. All right, let's dive into this interview with a coach who's going to share a lot of useful tips with us. We're going to dive in right now to part 1 of Coach Kevin Woodard's interview. The second and final part will be next week. All right, now for the interview. All right, I am here with Kevin Woodard. Kevin is a coach, a youth coach, somebody who's involved extensively with Little League or youth leagues, baseball leagues. He's got kids that are doing the youth baseball and softball thing. And I'm excited to have Kevin on today to discuss some things. We've been going back and forth for a long time talking, and I just approached Kevin. I said, Kevin, I'd love to have you come on and talk because you're exactly the kind of person that would, I think, have a lot of good information for all the youth coaches, youth parents, and the youth baseball world. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I wish the sun was out so we could be practicing this afternoon, but the rain's keeping us from it.
Well, that's a real baseball person right there. Somebody wants the rain to go away. I used to have teammates, they would be like, yes, practice is canceled. You want the rain to go away so you can get out on the field. I love that. So, Kevin, let's just start off. If you could give the listeners a quick summary, your baseball backstory, playing, coaching, and that path that has led you to where you're at today.
Let's see, my backstory. So I grew up in a little tiny town, 50-ish people. There's one league for the entire county. So there was just one team for our individual town. We were the Royals, which is why I'm a Kansas City fan today, is because my first Little League team was the Royals. And just a dad with a dozen or so kids out on a field with gopher and snake holes everywhere, just playing ball. And I played that for a couple of years and ran into a scenario where the coach said, hey, Kevin, why don't you go play second base? So I'm like, oh, I've been a bench guy, a right fielder. Okay. So I run out there and I promptly just put one foot on second base, stand there with my glove out, waiting for something to happen, and could hear the coach's kid who normally plays second base was like 10 years old at the time. And he's, man, that guy's an idiot. He has no idea how to play second base. And I was suddenly about an inch tall and there was nowhere I could go. I didn't know what to do. And I looked at the coach waiting for some instruction and I didn't get it. He let me just sort of hang out to dry, didn't back me up and say, hey, no, you can't say that. He left me out there for about 5 minutes and then traded me out for his kid at second base. I finished out the season and it just so happened I was in right field for the last game of our season. And if we won, we were going to go to the playoffs. And just so happens a kid hits a fly ball. I started running, stuck my glove out. I caught the ball. We won the game to go to the playoffs. So I had this weird mixed emotion of some of these kids don't even want me on this team, but I made the game winning catch. And we went to the playoffs, only played a couple of games and fell out. And that was it. I wanted nothing to do with baseball or really team sports. That kind of ruined it for me. Just that one incident was enough to it was fairly crushing. So I ended up just playing golf in high school. It's an individual sport. I can't get yelled at. And I was out of it until my son turned 6 and he got a bat and a ball for his birthday. And this is so fun. This is all he wanted to do. And I was happy about it. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I had a bad experience doing this myself, and he got into it, and I was a sideline dad, and I kept my mouth shut and I watched, and one of the coaches was like, hey, we need some help. And I'm like, all right, sure. So I ran out of the field and I helped for some practices. And then after that, the next season, I get a call from another coach saying, hey, do you want to come be my assistant? And I said, sure, let's see what this is all about, right? You never know until you get in it. And then you realize suddenly how little when you got a bunch of 7-year-olds staring at you to lead them into something. And you're like, holy cow, this is serious business. But eventually got into it, eventually started taking my own teams for spring and fall, got involved with a local high school. So I'm helping out, coached the local high school, coached some travel ball for a team here locally. I'm super involved with our local league board, doing coaching and sponsorships and fields and all that stuff to try to make the experience as best I can for the kids. And that's sort of the goal, is just make it a little bit better every day for them.
I think that's a fascinating story where you had what so many kids have, and that's a bad experience with youth sports and youth baseball. And then you've turned around and used it as a positive, and you're trying to go back and give experiences that you didn't get. And that's really a big thing that I've done, or it's led me on my path, is it wasn't so much all the great coaches I had, and I have had some great coaches, but some of those terrible coaches that really motivated me to be a much better coach. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. What small town are you from?
It's called Valley Springs. It's out in the Northern California Central Valley, outside of beautiful Stockton, California, about 45 minutes.
That whole area through there, I know Stockton's a little ways from Fresno, but it's just loaded with baseball talent. And I said on a podcast not that long ago, it may be the most underrated or under-discussed hotbed. Southern California's talked about, Florida, Texas, a lot of places in between, and even a little more north from that throughout the country. But that Central California, when you look at where people are from, in fact, I was at a Fresno State football game 3-4 months ago, and who's there getting his jersey retired? Aaron Judge. Now, Kevin, you got a wide experience with youth baseball from different angles. Why don't we start from that coaching perspective? First, you had a bad experience in baseball. What are some things you do that help you make the experience fun, build trust, and get to know players individually?
I am very young at heart. So I try to put myself in the shoes of whatever age group that I'm coaching. If I go out with a bunch of 6-year-olds doing T-ball, man, I'm going to be 6 years old right along with them. Some coaches and people that know me, it's not totally unheard of to see me on my knees in a T-ball practice, like growling like a dinosaur. I don't care. That's what's going to make it fun for the kids. And I can relate to them. It's, hey, do you like dinosaurs? Yeah, every 6-year-old likes dinosaurs. All right, well, let's apply it to a baseball. And you see that baseball on the ground, I'm going to use my hands like jaws, and I'm going to growl, and I'm going to eat that baseball. Suddenly you've just taught a 6-year-old how to get a grounder, and it's the funnest thing they've done all day long. And the coach is down on his knees getting in the middle of it. And yeah, I just put myself in that age group and try to relate to them and things that interest them all through the age groups.
So coaches, what Kevin just said is so vital to having success with kids at their level. And of course, we want to be the adults. We want to be the coach. We are the leaders. So we want to keep that separation when we can, but we have to be able to get to their level. I got an email from the local soccer league, and this local soccer league in Boise is loaded with kids. They can't fit more kids on the field than they already have. And there's probably a waiting list. In fact, it sells out rather quick. And I talked about this a while back on the podcast. A couple of their coaches, Coach T in particular, he's like that. He's what you're doing. And everybody wants to get on his team. Everybody wants to play for him. Everybody comes back every year. Their retention is through the roof because Coach T does exactly what you're talking about. He gets to their level and he relates to them. They definitely know he's the coach, but he gets to their level and he acts a little goofy and they soak it up and love it. And is there anything else that you would recommend to youth coaches that they could do to make it more fun and not be so serious?
Yeah, I would say the one that comes to mind immediately is all the kids love to play Fortnite. So if you can relate what you're doing to one of their video games that's super popular, oh man, you definitely got their attention. In Fortnite, there's these things where there's groups of 2, and these groups of 2 have to go out and do these missions. So, okay, I'm going to pair everybody up. You guys have to go do this mission. I grab stuff out of pop culture all the time and try to hand it to the kids, or even singing a lyric from some song that was just on the radio today and apply it to baseball. And they all look at me like, you're the old guy. What are you doing singing that song? Or what are you talking about Fortnite? And then it turns on that competition because I'll say, oh, I'm way better than you guys at Fortnite. And so all of a sudden they perk up and they smile. They're like, Coach, you play Fortnite? Yeah, let's go. And then all of a sudden those competitive juices start flowing. Whether or not we're playing Fortnite or not, we're back on the baseball field. And I said, all right, I'm going to strike you out right now. And they say, okay, let's go, Coach. The other thing too is it drops a lot of the fear and anxiousness with kids that might be shy or unsure of themselves, because now you're into an area of their life where they are really sure. They're really good at video games, but they're not good at baseball. So now you've challenged them mentally at something they're really good at. And all of a sudden you see them light up and all right, here we go. And the parents will say, wow, little Johnny was smiling today at practice. Yeah, I know. I'm going to end up getting beat up at Fortnite later, but for baseball, it was all a good time.
You're making a stronger connection with the kid by talking and relating to things and connecting things that they are very familiar with, things that they're interested in, and showing that connection between them and using that in the middle to connect to you. And then I love what you mentioned there at the end about kids are coming into baseball. They have some fear. They have some worry. Some of them have never played before or they're newer to it. And you try to give them more confidence and make them more comfortable and relaxed by creating an environment that is a little more familiar, like bringing up Fortnite or bringing up something that they're already familiar with and confident with, connecting something they feel confident with. What a great strategy.
Well, and part of it is be afraid to reward someone for something good. It's got to be even. You can't just bark at the kids. Like they do something good, go over the top with the praise. I have a kid now that's 14 and he's playing with some 16-year-olds, and his mom sent me a message saying, hey, he's nervous about playing with the bigger kids. And I said, all right, give me a practice. And we had him out doing grounders, and he did just this beautiful right foot, left foot, just toss to the second baseman. And I ran over like a 14-year-old and gave him high fives and patted him on the back. He was smiling and happy that someone noticed that I did something good. I didn't get yelled at for anything bad. I was just praised for doing a great job.
And I think that combination, it made me think of the two words. If somebody said, a new coach said, hey, Coach Bo, hey, Coach Kevin, if you could summarize it in two words or in one sentence, what's the goal for where you want your players to be come game time? And I would say focused and relaxed. Now, relax is comfortable, not fearful, not stressed, not worried. So relaxed. If you think about the greatest athletes in the world at their peak, when they're in the zone, their muscles and body are relaxed. So you're getting these kids to relax. Tense muscles, no matter how much they know the game or how great their mechanics and swing are, if they're tense and scared and their mind's not in the right place, you can throw all that other stuff right out the window.
Yeah, we talk about we are playing the game of baseball. Like I would give a couple of my fingers to be able to play baseball at the youth level again. It's called playing. I don't get to play. I have to coach. You guys get to go play and have fun at the game of baseball. Go play and have fun. Let it rip, man. No one's going to yell at you for a strikeout or anything like that. It's not why we're here. Your parents should be smiling and clapping. Like, how cool is all this? Have fun, man.
100%. Yeah, if we're yelling at players or if we're getting them tense, they're not going to play as well. So I think we have to ask ourselves as coaches, are my actions or is this action going to lead my players to play more tense? And if it is, good luck with getting them to play at their best, because that's not going to work out very well. Okay, moving forward, what are some of the main differences between just coaching your own kid versus working with more players or a team?
Yeah. In youth baseball, when you start coaching, typically it's not just you coach 1 year and then you're done. A lot of these dads that get into the youth coaching ecosystem tend to stay for a couple of years. So you'll get a group of kids at 6, 7, 8 years old, and you'll be with them until they're 12 when they graduate from Little League. And it's not just your kid anymore. You're 12 or 13 kids on your team. And in our case, we have 8 teams in majors, all those kids. You're out at the grocery store, those kids on those other teams are saying, hi, coach. So it's really not my kid, your kid, his kid. Man, they're all my kids. Like I would do anything for any of those kids if they asked me. So yeah, there's no difference between my kid and any other kid on the field.
So your style doesn't change and you keep it the same. Isn't that just the easier way to do it? You're not having to be like two different people?
Yeah, I get sometimes accused of going too far and not giving my own kid enough attention, but he gets it because for all the years that I've been coaching, that means he's been coaching too, because, hey, I got to go do a clinic. Do you want to go? Yeah, I'll go. Let's go get some reps. But then as he got older, the clinics I was running were for younger kids. So it's, hey, you want to go do this clinic for some kids that are 2 or 3 years younger than you and show them what you got? Yeah, let's go. So he's a coach. And then when he's on my team as a player, he understands that today I've got to give this kid attention because he needs it. If we're doing catcher practice and he's a catcher, yeah, I'm going to focus in on him a little bit more. But yeah, these are all my kids.
The kids know when we're acting different. I think just being yourself, just being one person is just so much easier and more authentic. And maybe you could share your thoughts on this. I recommend coaches, when they go to coach a team that has their own kid on it or kids, that they communicate before the season or they communicate before practice or at least early on in the season to their own kid at home or before they get out to the field. Just communicate with them and say, you are the most important kid to me in the world. You always will be. But you got to understand, when we go out to the field, I'm coaching each kid and I'm going to be a coach. I'm still your dad. But when we're out there, I'm going to coach in a way that I look after all the kids. I'm going to try to be great for every kid. Just know that going in, I'm going to treat you just like all the other kids. Now, when practice is done, you're going home with me. You're my kid. Hey, you are different. You're going to be more special to me in the long run and in life. But at the end of the day, when we get out to practice, my responsibility is to show support and care for each kid.
Yeah, I totally agree. My son and I came up with a deal that we have our baseball hats. And so when I'm going from home to the field, I don't have my hat on. So I'm dad. We get to the field and I put on my Little League hat that's coach. And most of the kids know that they see me without a hat. Hey, it's just Aaron's dad. They see that hat on, it's Coach Kevin. And it wasn't from day one. There's a lot of hard lessons learned in those first few years of coaching with your son to get to the point where we have this symbiosis now where we get along. And I tell people all the time that ask about coaching my kid, I'm like, at the end of the day, I want my kid to love me after this. If I'm a jerk and beat him down all the way home because of a bad game or whatever, he's not going to like me. He's not going to like baseball. It's just going to be a bad experience. I want my kid to love me and enjoy my company. So we came up with that, and that's what works for us. May not work for anybody else, but that's what we came up with as a way to separate coach from dad.
Love the idea of putting the cap on or not having the cap on, and that being an indication of now I'm coach. When you have the hat on, does he call you coach?
Absolutely. You got to have those dividers. The hat's got to go on. It's coach.
I love the idea of the hat indicating that there's your coach, dad. And I really like what you mentioned, begin with the end in mind. At the end of practice, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, at the end of my kid's childhood, I don't want them to hate me. So I hear when you say that, I love when coaches share with me that message, because it's not like I'm just trying to win the moment. I'm really trying to win the big picture.
Yeah. Once you reach that point, it's like an epiphany. And I say this is something that unless you're a youth coach with your kid on the team, it's not something that you understand how hard of a switch that is to flip, because you're on a field and you become just as competitive as the kids and you got to let it go. It even shows up in our player evaluations for getting ready for the season, because you got to do a tryout so they can be eligible for all-stars. And a coach will ask like, hey, what are you looking at? Hey, did you see the kid with those fluorescent green socks? He was running. It wasn't anything to do with his hitting. It wasn't anything to do with pitching. It was like, he had cool socks and he was running fast. Like it's a mindset shift. And it's something that the sooner you get there, man, the better this thing is and the more you're going to enjoy it.
I think you said that as well as anybody can say. That's just a fantastic message. Okay, so we're talking about working with different players, and you go to the field and you've laid it out that, hey, you're treating each kid equally out there. You're the coach. You're out of dad mode. Now you're the coach for all the players. How do you make sure to equally divide your attention to all the players, not just your kid, but just what are some things you do to make sure that you, Coach Kevin, are divvying up your attention, anything that you pay attention to or track, or how do you go about dividing up your coaching attention?
One of the parts of my practice that is, to me, the most important is that catch play at the beginning of practice, so that the kids are playing catch. And I do that catch play for as long as needed. So we might do that 60 feet of catch for 15, 20, 25 minutes. And I'll really take an opportunity to walk around, and it's a way for me to learn the kids' names. But then if they're wearing a 49er jersey, it's like, hey, I'm a Chiefs fan. We're going to walk over you next Sunday. You get a little rapport going. So then they smile. You're talking about that. And you move on to the next kid and you're just saying, hey, how's it going? Hey, you came in late. Is everything all right? How you doing? Next kid. Hey, that last game, you only had a couple of hits. Don't worry about it, man. We're going to get this one. If there's anything you want to work on, you let me know. I consciously try to get over half the kids every practice saying hi, acknowledge their names, ask them about something in their life. Because I try to ask them, hey, you doing anything outside of baseball? Oh yeah, I paint. Okay, well, show me. How's school going? Are you grades are good, all that kind of stuff. And then for the practice time, and it doesn't always work, but I do try to get it so that I'm not always handling a drill myself the whole time during practice. I let the other coaches run all the drills and stations. So it gives me the freedom to move around. And like I said earlier, I try to get to the kids' level in terms of I'm doing 12-year-olds. I'll act like a 12-year-old. I'll just say funny stuff to the kids to throw them off a little bit. Oh man, you missed it. Hey, how come you're dropping balls, man? And oh, coach, you messed me up. It's just those fun little things that you relate to them, you can interact with them. And it's not these long conversations. It just needs to be a quick second just to know that you see them, right? It doesn't have to be this big thing. It's just a second of acknowledgement. And it helps so much with both of us, not just the kids, but myself.
It makes me think of the book, The 1 Minute Manager. It's not a baseball manager book, but it's a great book. Recommended it before on the podcast. The 1 Minute Manager, essentially, you have this finite, tiny amount of time. We think about how busy we are with our lives or during a practice, among all our other responsibilities as a coach at practice. But now we got to connect with all our players. We got to relate to them. They got to feel heard and recognized and noticed. And while that may not be equal across every practice and every kid, that 1 Minute Manager book has some really good strategies on how to have quality, quick 1 minute conversations.
Yeah, it gives me the freedom to go any direction I want when I'm free enough that somebody's running a drill and I'm there next to the line watching the kids go through it. Because there's no kid, I don't care how confident they are, that wants to hear the guy running the drill. You did it wrong. You did it wrong. You did it wrong. If the kids can go through this and then I can take Lucas off to the side and say, Lucas, man, that was a great job. Can you show the kid behind you what you did? Because they're doing it just a little bit different, but can you show them what you did? Cool. Thanks, man. High five. Get on with it. Or a kid he's having a tough day and he's acting out. So I can pull little Johnny out and say, Johnny, man, hey, I don't know what's going on today, but I really need you to zero in and focus. So having the freedom to do all those things allows me to be not necessarily a chameleon, but be the person that kid needs me to be in that moment. If it's their supporter, if it's the accountability guy, whatever it is, having that freedom allows me to be whatever those kids need me to be at the time.
So the first thing you have to look at, coaches, is buying some time and creating some of that freedom. Automate the warm-up routine, the dynamic warm-up routine, a static warm-up routine if you have one, the throwing routine. The kids will get it. They'll get it down. They'll figure it out. I've done this with countless teams and they get it within about the third practice. I can sit back and not have to say anything. In fact, I ran, about 17 years ago, I had working inner city with mostly kids from Compton and Watts in North Long Beach. These kids were coming from some of the most troubled neighborhoods and tough situations. They didn't have a lot of structure. They were extremely challenging students. They were 9th and 10th graders. And so you're already in that age where they're too cool for school. I had to really build a lot of rapport. And I thought, man, I don't think I'll ever get to the point where they're going to follow directions all the time. I had classes of 60 students at a time from areas that literally teachers would walk right out of school and never come back. They'd leave the class and they would have staplers thrown at them. They would just leave. There was fights all the time, stabbings right outside my door of my classrooms. And I got 60 kids in 5 different classes to do the entire warm-up routine. The warm-up routine took 12 minutes and there's a lot of steps and there was a lot of intricacy. I had them on autopilot within 1 month and all I had to do was blow my whistle one time. I just blew my whistle and they knew exactly what to do. I had to build up the rapport. They had to trust me. They had to know I was just not out there trying to boss them around. So they bought into where I was coming from. They loved the autonomy. They didn't want me having to tell them, go. They don't like that. They want autonomy. So I gave it to them. And if I could get those kids to do it, we can definitely get 12 baseball kids in our community or in our area on our team to do stuff like that. What it allowed me to do was buy time to go talk to those students that were not doing well. A student that hadn't been to school in a week, a student that might have been looking to fight another kid. It bought me time, like you said, it freed up so much time for me to connect. And then the rapport and the growth of the class, it was like exponential after that.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing what you can learn from the kids. And it's 30 seconds. It's just a short interaction. What's the saying? Kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so if you just show them you care for just a second, man, it just pulls down walls and all the barriers come down and they're like, hey, I've never slid into a base before. Man, that's awesome. Let's go. We're going to have sliding practice and we're going to do this for half an hour. We're going to have so much fun. And they're like, whoa, calm down, coach. No, that's exciting that you don't know how to do this. Let's do it. That part of it is so cool because it changes everything.
Yes. So they come to you like with the pain point. These kids have a lot of pain points, right? They have a lot of things, fears. And we don't even know it unless we get it out of them sometimes. You may not know that kid doesn't like to slide. It's like your kid comes home and says, I don't want to go to school. They might say it's boring, but maybe it's something else. Maybe they're getting bullied or maybe they're struggling with reading or whatever, right? So you're never going to find that out unless you ask some good questions. All right, we're going to transition away from that topic. And speaking of transition, what's a tip or two you might have for coaches that are going from that daddy ball to trying to transition past that to the next level?
So when you say daddy ball, you're talking that age of 12 years old and they're going to like the intermediate juniors level. I would say I change what that's called. So that's what I have this year, intermediate and juniors. And it's really a good time to call it high school prep. The way we're framing it is it's high school prep. You're starting all over again. You have this knowledge, but now everyone raised their hand when they said they wanted to play high school ball. So now we have to sort of start over again, taking the skill set that you have and let's get it refined. And it's the same in a lot of ways. Like you're still teaching fundamental baseball, but the language you use can be a little different. It doesn't have to be so simple and so specific. Now you can relate it. You do this one thing and it makes it possible to do this other thing. Right, left, towards first base is going to give you the momentum because you're throwing a lot farther. That's not 60-foot bases anymore. There's another 30 feet there that you got to get that ball. And so a lot of it is really the same to me in terms of what we're trying to teach the kids, because the kids are so much more skilled than they used to be, that the skills that we didn't start teaching until they were 12, we're putting into kids at 8, 9. That footwork stuff's coming in much younger. So they're much more knowledgeable when they come up. So it becomes more mechanically driven. And I would say the other thing too is if you want to keep going after 12, you've got to get your self-education. You can't just go along with the knowledge that you have in your head from watching baseball. That doesn't cut it anymore once they turn 13. You really got to start learning, okay, the dynamics of hitting. You got to look at pitching mechanics because these kids start putting on some muscle and they're taller and that wingspan is 6, 7 feet long on some of these kids. Amazing how far that ball travels for some of them. And you have a responsibility to not hurt the kids. And that's the biggest thing I see is the possibility of pain. You start seeing arm pain in a kid that's 10 years old. It's probably just he threw too much or whatever, and he was playing and did something else and you can rest for a little bit. You get arm pain in a 13, 14-year-old, you're looking at something entirely different. And is it mechanical? Is it something they did outside of baseball? Then you're talking to the parents about it and then it just becomes a bigger thing. So it's safety, continued education are the big things for me.
The arm care and keeping them injury free. I like what you're saying there. And I got an email yesterday from a dad who's coaching and he's going to be coaching his nephew. And he talked about some of the arm pain coming in there and how to work through that. And you're right. And that's 10 years old. You mentioned that the players are more knowledgeable maybe now than they were before. I've heard a lot of coaches that, in the coaching community say that they feel like the kids aren't as knowledgeable because they're not playing as much baseball. They're not watching as much baseball, I should say. There's so many more things that can take their attention away. I see you got a Driveline sweatshirt on, by the way. Love that sweatshirt. Love the design. I've gone over to Driveline. I flew over there and checked it out. I've been a big fan of Driveline since day one. I think they got a lot of old school coaches trying to hate on some of the new school stuff. And they got a lot of hate early on from old school coaches. And I consider myself an old school coach, but I'm also open-minded. And I would have these coaches ask me for years. I even had a pro guy ask me about Driveline years ago, a major league player that I had coached. What do you think about Driveline? And I said, well, go check it out. Go check it out. Go over there. I do think, and tying it back together, the players, I think, are more knowledgeable. Some players are much more knowledgeable because they have access to things, a lot of resources that they can access that we couldn't get to back in the day. There wasn't the internet. But I do think there's also a lot of distractions too. So I think as a coach, my message would be to feel it out. And each player is going to be different. If you have a kid who's really diving in and learning a lot, maybe you go further with them with the mechanics and things like that. But maybe if you have a kid that he's playing Fortnite is the minute he leaves practice and has never watched a baseball game. They've never been to a minor league game. They've never been to a high school game. Well, then you got to probably back up a little with those kids and go from there. I really like what you talked about the high school prep. I said daddy ball. That term daddy ball gets thrown around where the parents are telling kids where to go and what to do. But I like how you actually took that and said, hey, there's a second phase of youth baseball. There's like the first phase. And that second phase is let's prep you for the high school, which is most kids want to go play high school that play youth baseball. They don't all, and some don't really care to. That's always a good, at least to have the opportunity. So I like how you broke that up.
Yeah, I don't think you should be coaching for the year of development they're in. You got to be coaching for the next year. So whatever they're going to need the next year, you got to start working on it now, because if you wait until they need it, it's too late, because that knowledge piece just won't be there. And to clarify sort of what I mean about knowledge is the Little League is almost taught in stations. So it's, you get to first base and then you stop. Okay, that's station 1. Okay, now you get to second base, station 2. There's none of this continuation of the game, and that no matter where the ball goes, there's 100 things happening. So, and from that standpoint of knowledge, I think it is lacking in a lot of ways. But if you sit in a living room with 4 or 5 kids playing MLB The Show, these kids know way more than you think in terms of pitch selection, of where to put a pitch, like where to have the batter stand. All of a sudden they're moving things around and you're like, I didn't know you knew that. Like, where did that come from? And so they know these things that you didn't think about that they would know. And so that's, again, goes way back to the beginning when I said relate to them on their level. So if you can talk to a pitcher about MLB The Show, like, hey, what would you throw Aaron Judge? Like, all right, well, let's try it. Throw that pitch selection to this kid and let me know how it works. And then if it doesn't work, we'll change it. But you come back and relate it. And it's eye-opening for some of the kids to even think about that.
100%. The technology can definitely, whether it's video games or being able to access videos on YouTube or being able to access a lot of Mike Trout and Joey Votto, all these, there's so many videos out there of hitters, Shohei doing his thing. You can see their routines. A lot of them are just out there showing us what they're doing. Technology is definitely expediting the knowledge in some players and some kids that take advantage of it. But I also think it's doing the opposite to some kids. Now there's so much distraction. When we were younger, playing ball in the late 80s, you didn't have a lot of stuff. You played baseball, you played sports, so you really got involved more and you weren't as distracted. So technology, just keep an eye as coaches. Is this kid somebody who's just not taking advantage of this and he has a lot of other distractions? And those aren't bad things. Maybe they're going to go on and work for SpaceX when they're older or go work for Apple. Maybe they're going to do something different than baseball, and that's fine. We don't want them just to put them in that little tight box of, hey, you're going to be a baseball player or else. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I think as coaches, we need to acknowledge the difference between which players can take more, those kids that go play MLB The Show and those that are going home. And they're on Discord talking about coding and things like that. I think one thing that really helps play up a level, and you mentioned it, you want to coach for the next year. You want to coach them like thinking for the next year and the year after. I think a physical part of that is, and this never happened to me when I was playing, but I wish it would have, take me to the big field. As the bases get further, the mound gets further. Why wasn't I out practicing on the bigger field, like throwing a bullpen before I went to that 60-foot mound? Why didn't I go pitch the year before some bullpens, like maybe a couple, maybe just during the off season? That's such a good idea to take your kid and go, hey, hit from that further distance, pitch from that further distance, throw it from shortstop from that further distance. Now, are they going to be successful right away? Probably not. But the idea is to get them accustomed to it and ready for it and much more confident when they jump up.
Yeah, for my stuff, I have the 13, 14, 15-year-old. And so I'm the division manager for the younger group, the 10s, 12s. And hey, here's my practice schedule. If you want your catchers to get some bullpen practice, come to my practice. I have 33 kids that are going to pitch. So rotate them through. Everybody gets 30 pitches. You guys are going to get catcher work from a farther distance. All it's going to do is make you better in the long run. Or, hey, at the high school's having practice today, they're going to run a few pitchers through. Hey, 12-year-old, do you want to come catch a high schooler? Oh, I'm scared. I said, you won't be after you do it for a little bit. Then when you come back to Little League, it's going to be easy. So yeah, exposing those kids to the higher levels and however you can do it, even if it's just sitting in the dugout during a high school practice and watching how things work is an amazing experience for the kids. So having that high school mentality that everything's going towards high school, the more involved you can get the high school in that, the better. And it helps. So it helps with their development.
Absolutely. Giving them a taste of a faster paced game. I'm going to shout out to Kevin here I think he just hit the nail on the head perfectly. Where are the specific spots you can utilize this? For example, you don't want to bring up hitting and at-bats are at a premium. You want your kids on your team to get as many at-bats as they can. So giving them away to younger kids, that's tough. Also, pitching. If you bring up a 10-year-old to a 13-year-old practice and he's pitching, unless he's just some future all-star, he's probably not helping your 13-year-olds, right? It might be hurting your 13-year-olds a little bit, but when it comes to catching, trying to get your catcher away from some extra reps sometimes and using them at other positions or as a pitcher, as a hitter can be really helpful. I know catching is super important and getting a ton of reps as a catcher is super important, but by giving those reps away, I think it doesn't hurt your current team nearly as much. Another one would be having them at first base, catching throws, or helping with other things that aren't necessarily taking away a ton of reps from the actual team if you're bringing kids up. And I think catching bullpens is probably the best because not only are they getting better and they're getting a lot of reps, curveballs or breaking balls or changeups might be a little bit better. The fastballs are typically going to be faster. The distance might be different. And just reps as a catcher is just massively important. But first off, you don't even have enough catchers on your current team to catch all those pitchers. There's a lot of angles you could take, but I think that's the best one. So if you got a team and you got some younger kids around, invite those younger kids, those younger siblings, especially if they're catchers, and you get your bullpens done faster. You get all your pitching in. Everybody gets their work in.
Yeah, I've got in the high school teams between JV and varsity, there's only 3 catchers. And that's not enough for 36 some odd kids or 40 kids. And plus those catchers are playing other positions on the field. So if I can bring up a 12 to 14-year-old catcher and hey, get some reps, man. It opens up so much stuff. It gives everybody more experience. And then if I go the other way and I said, hey, we had so-and-so at your high school practice, I'm helping you out. Hey, what do you think about coming to my 12U practice and showing them some stuff? Yeah, coach, I can do that. Like, it's not a guilt trip, but it's like, hey, it's a nice intellectual trade, right? And once those younger kids see the high schooler show up, I might as well leave because the high schooler's the cool kid now, right? I'm nobody.
All right, that wraps up part 1 of our interview with Coach Kevin Woodard. A lot of good stuff there. What I would recommend is take 1 or 2 of the main things that really resonated with you that you feel would best help your coaching game, your team for this upcoming season, and take that, run with it, and see how you can implement it into your system, into your coaching strategies. Next week, we'll do part 2 of the interview, and I'll give you an update on the Drill Design Guide PDF that's free for you. It's about 20 pages. I'll keep you updated on that. If you wouldn't mind leaving a rating or a review, that always helps give back, or share this podcast with a friend of yours. Appreciate all of you. Love getting emails from all of you here in the 80/20 baseball community. I really feel that now that we're in our 5th year on this podcast, that those coaches that this podcast resonates with, that really get where we're coming from, what we're doing here, that really understand the purpose, that really connect with myself and those people that come on here to do interviews, really connecting on the same level when it comes to being better coaches and better people. So I appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your week. I look forward to being back next week. Until then, let's really take care of our health so we can be great for our family. And let's take care of our health so we can be there for our close friends when they need us. Speaking of which, my buddy Garrett, it was not good, and he may pull it out here. There might be a transplant in the future. I'm not going to dive into the details too much, but there might be a transplant that could come about. Talk about going up against all odds. I've been downplaying it because I don't want to dive too much into it here on the podcast, but he's going against basically it's as uphill as you can get, and he's still with us. So it's amazing, and he's a fighter. So just that little quick update on him. And let's take care of our health so we can be there and be at our best for our family, our close friends, so we can be at our best when we go out to the baseball field. And taking this information out there, let's take it out to the field. Let's put this into play. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.